So this year we have elections in November, and it's going to be for mayor, for city council member, for city controller, as you're running also for that position.
Full disclosure, I'm a candidate for city controller of the city of Houston.
Correct.
But I also invite my opponents, if they want to come on the program, come on in.
That'll be good.
Wouldn't
You
it?
know what?
Absolutely.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have a brawl right here.
And this is live. Okay, so we today we're having Derrick Broze. He is a candidate for mayor of Houston, and he's conservative. And I was reading his website, and he said that he's the only candidate that is conservative, which is, but the mayor is a non-partisan race, but.
Well, I think he means conservative in the sense of conservatism in terms of administering government, not that necessarily he aligns with the Republican Party, but we'll let him talk about that.
And he's also investigative journalist, so
wow.
Colleague. How are you, Derrick? Good morning and welcome to TLC.
Derrick, you're muted. You got to unmute yourself either. I don't know if we've got it.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate it.
You bet. So tell us a little bit about Derrick Broze.
Sure. So you kind of started to allude to some of my politics. I can share more about that, but I'll give more of a personal history first for those who maybe in this audience aren't familiar with my work. I'm born and raised in Houston. I'm 38 years old now, and I've been involved in Houston activism and politics over the last 14 years in different ways, starting in late 2009, 2010, really partially inspired by former Congressman Ron Paul and his 2 presidential runs, and kind of just starting to get involved in politics in that way and paying attention to what government's up to and all that, learning about the ins and outs and for me, the corruption. And along that path, my activism evolved into taking journalism seriously, and now that's what I do for a living as a full-time job. I'm an independent freelance investigative journalist. I've produced documentaries. I've written books. As I said, I've been involved in different forms of activism in Houston, from homeless outreach to building community gardens to going to city council to try to, talk about important issues that need to be discussed more widely, to putting a camera and a microphone in the face of politicians like the current mayor of Houston, Sylvester Turner, as well as the previous mayor, the previous police chief. Just anybody who I think is coming to Houston and maybe needs to answer some questions or that I have questions for. And that's the path I've been on for now the last 14 years. I will say that a lot of my views and my policies, the things I want to create and do in terms of being a mayoral candidate, are also influenced and sort of filtered through my experiences prior to getting involved in politics. I'll say at 20 years old, I got addicted to drugs and I went to prison. And that's really the beginning of me kind of, I guess you could say, waking up in some way, really starting to reassess my life and decide what direction I wanted to go. And getting out after that experience in 2008, as sort of experiencing the drug war firsthand and the criminal justice system, I'd say the parts that don't work, and then maybe some parts that are better, but not necessarily working to the full extent they could. And then also getting out through that experience and experiencing life in Houston as a felon, as an individual who's changing my life. It's been now 18 years. And just as an example, I'm in the process of moving to a new home here in Houston. And my felony from 18 years ago, nonviolent drug possession felony, still affects me and my ability to where I can rent a house or get an apartment. And if I wasn't an entrepreneur and a freelancer, then it would probably still affect my ability to get a job as well in the city. So I feel like, and I've seen in my experience that going through that allows me to speak to a wide range of people. My beliefs, especially when it comes to social issues, would be closer on the conservative area in some, and then maybe more liberal, although I don't think that's the correct term I would use, really more open in some areas. But generally speaking, I definitely use my activism, my voice, my journalism to try to see how we can limit and reduce government as much as possible. And that's part of what I'm running on in this race.
So congratulations. First of all, thank you for sharing your past experience with us, and congratulations on overcoming the addiction, which is any addiction, whether it's cigarettes, caffeine,
Sure.
meth, cocaine. It's
Any drugs,
difficult. society looks at people as, druggies and whatnot. No, it's an addiction. Alcoholism, we all know now, is a medical condition. It's an addiction, and so it's tough. And so we salute you and applaud you and thank you for sharing that. For those that may be going down that same journey, perhaps you can serve as an inspiration to them. But I was going to say before you got on the program, it sounded to me that you more, on the political spectrum, that you were probably more libertarian than you were either Republican or Democrat. And it sounds to me like that's probably what you are. You're probably, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're for a very limited government that really does what it's supposed to do and then leaves everything else and leaves people alone. And that's why I think you said that you're on the social side, more accepting. You probably don't get into homosexual issues or marriage issues, whether a man should marry a man or a woman, or those are sort of libertarian positions that, leave people alone. As long as they're not breaking the penal code, they're paying their taxes, government doesn't need to step in and tell you what to do. Am I off base there, Derrick, or is that pretty much capture your Walzenschong, so to speak?
That's a fair assessment. I mean, I would say that generally speaking, obviously I have my opinions and my views on those topics that you mentioned there, and happy to explore that. But generally speaking, I try not to, especially in terms of being a candidate, I prefer not to think in terms of legislating from my specific moral position. I do think there are many issues where government has no say and should have no say in our personal affairs. But I also, and all of this is available on my campaign website, derrickbroze.com. For example, we'll just go ahead and broach the topic. It's Pride Month here. I put out a blog post earlier this month sharing my views on that rather controversial, increasingly controversial area of discussion for anybody who's curious, and kind of sharing, like I said, that balancing my views from a conservative point in some areas, but also, again, wanting the government to not necessarily interfere in people's livelihoods as well.
Well, I got to tell you, that's a very nice website. We've been looking at it and commenting on it. So whoever did it, kudos to them. And kudos to you for putting your name in the hat. Because as you know, I've run for mayor twice. I served on the city council 6 years. I don't know if you're aware of that. You're young. You were probably in diapers when I was in government. But congratulations. It's a tough job. So let me ask you the tough question. To run for mayor of Houston, you've got to do a lot of advertising. A lot of folks think, well, I put my name on the hat, I'll pay the $1,250 to get my name on the ballot. But then how do you get your message out? Because if people don't hear your message, Derrick, they're going to go down the ballot. There's, 14 names on there. Obviously, the name Senator John Whitmire or Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee will stand out. Those are the two top names. So how do you overcome that? How do you get your message across to Houstonians?
Yeah, so I mean, you're 100% right. It's about reaching people, getting people to be aware of your name, because even if you have the best policies out there, if they have no idea who you are, well, then they're not going to support you. And the claimed top two candidates, I really do take issue with the way the media reports on this. There's often this reports of, here are the 5 candidates running. Currently, there are 12 people who have filed for campaign treasurer, including myself. And in a couple of weeks, when we can file to be on the ballot, I'll be there to file and pay the fee on day one, because I'm serious about this race, as I was in 2019. Part of my strategy and our efforts has been, I have the benefit of having been doing this sort of work for 14 years now. So I have my own kind of built-in following via social media, and as well as support base here in Houston. So we're not starting off totally from scratch, but there is also the issue, of course, that the average voter in Houston is 60 and older. There's very little voting from anybody my age or younger, and we're trying to see what we can do to activate them and to inspire them to really care. But at the moment, the average voter is probably not somebody who's following me on social media, right? Somebody who is much more familiar with Sheila Jackson Lee, much more familiar with John Whitmire. And so we're doing the traditional stuff of block walking. We're going out to events. We're doing phone banking. We've got, voter data at our disposal. And we're definitely leveraging social media. We're doing public events. I'll mention we have an event coming up on July 9th, and this is in the downtown Houston area in the 3rd Ward at Axelrad, which is a very popular weekend venue for, let's say, the 40 and under crowd to go hang out on the weekends. And so we'll be having some music, and we'll be having the campaign. We're doing things like that as well. We're trying to go to the neighborhoods that we know are voting, a voting demographic that will vote in every election, reach out to them. But also we're trying to activate people who maybe don't see anything in this race, because the two people you mentioned there are deeply tied to the Democratic Party, as are the other alleged main candidates, Robert Gallegos, former council member, and others. I would say 70% or more of the candidates are tied to the Democratic Party and do support the Biden agenda and far left policies, Build Back Better agenda. And as I said, I align with conservatives in many areas. I would put myself in that libertarian category, but I think myself and maybe one other person are the only ones who offer anything close to an alternative in any real serious manner. Because although my name is not known as much as Sheila Jackson Lee or John Whitmire, or folks might look at me and say I'm younger, or I'm not, the stereotypical candidate that they're used to, we have real ideas and real practical strategies and ways to approach many of the city's issues. And I think that if people do give our campaign a serious look, they will be surprised. And this is what we saw when I ran in 2019 too, that although I often heard from people, I think you're too young, or I'm not going to vote for you, but I support what you're doing. There was much support around the city. Everywhere we went, people were resonating with the message that we're sharing, which is very much about trying to expose the corruption within the current administration, which is on the way out, thankfully, but more importantly, focusing on solutions, like what can we actually do to fix some of the concerns that Houstonians have, rather than just throwing more money at it or creating a new government department.
And from a campaign perspective, I guess the good news is for you and your generation is it's far cheaper nowadays to advertise digitally than it is to go to ABC 13, CBS, NBC, Fox News, Telemundo, Univision, because they gouge you, for terrestrial ads. But you can do digital ads.
Yeah, and social media these days.
Social media nowadays really is taking over.
People are really more in social media than watching TV.
Yeah,
I mean,
and I got to say, I was watching the news the other day, Andrea, and it's just that they don't do anything innovative. Nothing. They report on the the 3 homicides over on the north side, east side, and one on the southwest side. The concrete buckling. I mean, every station does the same thing. It's like the news directors call each other. They go to happy hour together the night before and say, well, what are we going to talk about tomorrow? No station is out there doing anything innovative.
No, and the worst thing
is
and
investigative
then
reporting.
You watch the news in English today, and tomorrow the Spanish.
Yeah, they pick it up.
The Spanish, they put what the English did yesterday.
It's the English wire.
Nobody
is innovative, and
that is ridiculous. And you as a journalist, I'm sure you know that.
It's frustrating. Well, I want to add to that just real quick, if I may, that this is one of the reasons why, the barriers that we're trying to overcome through this campaign that I'm trying to highlight to anybody who's following. And it is the really huge dearth of reporting, like not only in terms of what you're talking about, Orlando, just on daily issues, but when it comes to this campaign, there is pretty much no reporting done. We're now, about just under 4 months away. We're about to file to be on the ballot, and things really just start heating up locally. But I think there would be a lot more engagement if the local media from all the different channels actually took the time to interview all the different candidates. There's 12 people right now. Maybe they
but
won't
the
all
problem,
stay in
Derrick, is they're paying these people $28,000 a year, and they're not giving them the resources to go do any in-depth reporting. I mean, they're just getting up in the morning, and the producer says, KPRC's did that big wreck on I-10. Get out there and go get some footage.
Well, Derrick, journalists these days is not the journalists back in the time. I mean, I don't know if you know my background, but I used to be the news anchor of Univision. And I work at Univision for 15 years, 12 here in Houston, 3 years in Laredo, Texas. But in that time, people didn't have a choice to watch anything else but the news. So we were making more efforts. I remember we were doing special stories. I'm an investigative reporter. We were doing the 4 months that we call it sweeps, which is the rating months. And we were like really making an effort to do something and investigate something and do real stories. These days, they don't care anymore. They don't do any called sweeps. Nielsen still exists, but the ratings, to me, they're not accurate at all, and people are not really watching the news. Like, I have probably 6 TVs in my house. My kids don't watch TV. They're all the time here. And I see a lot of people that even me, I don't have cable anymore. I have YouTube TV sometimes to watch, the national news, but the local news are horrible to watch. I mean, it's wasting
Yeah,
time. They don't do their job. We used to, and Orlando remember that, we used to cover City Hall every week. Every week we
sure.
were at
Yeah.
City Hall. Every week we were at a commissioner's court. Every week we were at the criminal.
Obviously, she was a distraction at City Hall because all the city council members were looking at her and not paying attention to the debate, Derek.
So
You know what? I
here's my
think that
question, Derek.
these are
Eric,
some of
there
the,
goes.
Yeah, yeah.
I was going to say,
Comment
this
on
is
that,
some
and
of the
then
reason.
I ask you something.
Sure. Yeah, this is some of the reason I think that people are looking more and more towards the internet, and why people like myself have been able to make a career out of this is because I didn't go to journalism school. I just have a natural interest and knack for investigating, for asking hard questions. And, I've been to the press conferences with some of the other media. I've tried to schedule meetings with Mary Benton for the current mayor. And in many ways, what I notice is that the media continues to fall down on their job. People see this nationally with CNN and others like that, but we don't always look at our local media as the same way. But they have been a huge roadblock in the 2019 election. And up till now, mostly they've ignored me. I am open and continue to remain open to interviewing with any candidates. In 2019, we were able to get on all the local networks and get airtime, get in, the Chronicle and everything. And I'm grateful for that. But what I was saying earlier is I think it's the fact that they fail to do really in-depth reporting when it comes to the races and the mayoral race, the city council race. There's no profiles of all the candidates or deep, conversations or even 5-minute conversations. And if they did that, and not only did that now, but early instead of just a few weeks before the election, I bet there would be more engagement. There would be more interest
Nope.
and being a part of it.
Well, let me just say, though, in their defense, the old saying, if it bleeds, it leads. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think the average citizen is going to get real excited about watching a 30-minute newscast on KPRC or Channel 13 or 11 or Fox News that is an in-depth profile of candidates. I mean, it's just not going to happen. But I understand what you're saying. I mean, and I share that frustration. I think their reporting ought to be more in depth on the issues, and then they can, hit a couple candidates and say, "What are you talking about?" So,
So my question here is, like, in case that you win this race that is very competitive, and I don't know, I mean, this is so many candidates, I don't know who's gonna win this, but what is your plan, for example, to get the message to the citizens of Houston, to let them know what is the government? I mean, people are clueless. People don't know that why they don't go vote, especially the Latinos. They come here to work, and even that we are 50% of the population. I mean, the voting rate is very low because they don't know.
Yep.
Nobody is educating them. The media is not doing their job. So, what is your plan about that?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we're definitely making an effort to reach out to non-traditional voters, and we do go campaign at the college campuses. We did in 2019. We plan to again this year. We're trying to do outreach. We're reaching out to those who are more on the conservative or libertarian side. Anyone who maybe feels like the current crop of candidates are too far to the left to their values. I think that the things I'm speaking about will resonate more with them. And I want to mention that the main plank from which everything else that I'm really talking about springs from is to take away the power of the mayor, to reduce the power of the mayor. And I see this as a conservative move, as a libertarian move. For those who are not aware, the mayor of Houston, not Sylvester Turner, but the position itself is one of the strongest in the United States, if not the strongest. And it's not just the strong mayoral form, but it is specific to Houston in terms of the mayor, whoever he or she is, gets to set the weekly city council agenda. And that city council agenda obviously sets the terms of what's going to be discussed and debated and potentially voted on. So if you want to talk about a topic that is not on the agenda and you want to go to city council to share your concerns and do your civil duty, you go to city council. You'll be placed at the end. You'll wait 2 to 3, 4 hours to speak. And when you get there, the mayor's gone, half the council's gone. And it's really a huge roadblock to progress that I've seen time and time again over the last decade plus. So we're calling for amending the city charter to make it that if 1/3 of city council, which would be 3 to 4 council members, if 1/3 of the council says my constituents are calling me, they're concerned about this issue, it should automatically be placed on the agenda, that the mayor does not have the power to block that. As it stands now, though, even if you had all 16 council members saying, my constituents are concerned about this particular topic, we need to discuss it, we need to debate, maybe potentially introduce a resolution and hold a vote, the mayor can still say no. And this sets up a situation where city council members have to get in good terms with the mayor in order to get anything done. I think that is part of what breeds corruption at the mayor's office. And thankfully, people are actually resonating with this idea. It took off in 2019. There was a coalition of groups in Houston that got together and gathered more than 40,000 petition signatures, and they succeeded. And it was supposed to be on the ballot last year, but Sylvester Turner didn't want it to happen. City council voted to delay it. It's supposed to be on the ballot this year. In addition to voting for city council and mayor, people are supposed to be able to vote to take away the power of the mayor's position, or to reduce it, at least to give it back to city council. And I think in an ideal world, this would encourage people to get more involved. If you actually knew that your city council member was going to listen to you and could do something about it, then you might choose to be more engaged. And so that is a core plank of what we're running on. And as I said, everywhere we go, conservative, Democratic, black, white, brown communities respond to that idea. I think most people don't even understand how strong the mayoral position is, and not necessarily in a way that serves them.
As opposed to San Antonio, for example, where the city manager really takes on the role of most of the duties of a mayor of Houston. For what Derrick is talking about is that every department head in the city of Houston works for the mayor. They answer to the mayor. Mm-hmm. Council members can call the head of public works and engineering, and they can go tell him to go pound dirt. I mean, they don't have to listen to the city council members. Now, they normally do, because the council member may go to the mayor and grovel, and the mayor says, hey, take care of that pothole in District E or District I or District J. But he's correct. But in San Antonio, the mayor doesn't have the power that the mayor of Houston does. The mayor of Houston is very powerful by city charter. And so what he's talking about is a charter amendment to diminish some of that power by giving members, a majority or a substantial number of city council members, the power to have an item placed on the agenda based on their initiative and not the mayor's.
Yep.
So, Derrick, thank you. We'd be happy to have you back. We're impressed with your background and your story. We congratulate you for overcoming your addiction and sharing your journey with us. And good luck. And I guess I'll see you down the road on the campaign trail.
I'll see you out there, yes. And if anybody's interested, my website for the campaign is just my full name, DerrickBroze.com. And I appreciate you guys giving me a chance to speak my message.
Well, thanks for reaching out to us. We're happy to have you. And any other